Hey there. If you're returning to the channel, welcome back. And if you're new, welcome. The series reports on events and 5 points in history associated with the date going back 100 years, 50 years, 25 years, 10 years, and 1 year ago. Let's get to it. November 2nd, 1924. The first crossword puzzle to appear in a British newspaper is included in the November 2nd, 1924 edition of the Sunday Express. Though this was the first time a crossword appeared in a British publication, the first crossword puzzle is reported to have appeared in the 1913 December issue of New York World. According to British-born immigrant Arthur Wynne, the popularity of crosswords eventually led to them becoming a regular feature in multiple publications. Wynne's original puzzle was diamond-shaped with a blank area in the center, putting a new twist on word puzzles that had become popular near the later part of the 19th century. Though the popularity of crosswords really started to take off during the 20s, there's some criticisms of the game, with some arguing that the puzzles encroached on productivity. In the case of the New York Times, the publication's stance on the crossword basically considered them to be a waste of time. It wasn't until 1942 that crosswords started to appear in the New York Times. It's a bit surprising due to the level of popularity the Times crossword has achieved in modern times. Though the popularity of physical print is in decline, the Times crossword continues to be quite popular in its digital format. November 2nd, 1974. 17-year-old Katherine Kolodziej was reported missing in Cobleskill, New York. Kolodziej had been out at a local college bar with a group of friends. She decided to stay at the bar after the rest of the group called it a night. Kolodziej was a student at the State University of New York, living on campus, which was about a mile from the bar. Some sources state that Kolodziej's roommate reported her missing when she did not turn up the next morning. Sadly, Kolodziej would be found stabbed to death 26 days later. The resulting investigation consisted of many interviews and appeals to the public for any information regarding Kolodziej. Though there were many tips and seemingly promising leads, investigators that have worked the case over the years hit dead ends. Perhaps most notably, one of the most promising leads came from a witness reporting that a woman matching Kolodziej's description entered a yellow Volkswagen Beetle after leaving the bar around 1:45 a.m. Sadly, the lead would not pan out, and to this day, the case remains unsolved. November 2nd, 1999. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration ship Whiting arrives to assist with the search for debris from Egypt Air Flight 990. Flight 990 took off from Los Angeles, stopping at JFK International Airport in New York, after which the plane would be heading for Cairo. In the early AM of October 31st, 1999, the flight would crash into the Atlantic, killing all 217 people on board. The circumstances leading to the crash are to this day still not 100% agreed upon, and though mechanical failure had been ruled out by the National Transportation Safety Board investigation, the NTSB ruled the cause of the crash was the result of actions taken by the relief first officer after the captain had stepped out of the cockpit to use the restroom. Based on the audio recovered from the flight recorder, the relief officer could be heard saying, "I rely on God," less than a minute after the captain stepped out. Upon the captain's return, he began inquiring about the issue after the plane had made a rapid descent from which it had recovered before the captain had re-entered the cockpit. A brief exchange between the captain and relief officer were picked up on the flight recorder before the plane made its final descent and crashed. Though the NTSB concluded that the cause of the crash was likely due to the actions of the relief officer, speculating that it was not due to error but deliberate action, the Egyptian Civil Aviation Authority was not satisfied with this finding. Their official response stated that mechanical failure was likely the cause. November 2nd, 2014. The presidential elections were held in Romania. Of the 14 candidates, Victor Ponta secured around 40% of the vote, and runner-up Klaus Johannes reaching around 30%. With neither candidate obtaining the majority of the vote, a runoff election would be held on November 16th. Johannes would go on to secure victory during the runoff, obtaining 54% of the vote to Ponta's 45%. The victory was said to be surprising, given Ponta was favored to win based on several polls going into the first round, which proved to be accurate based on the voting results. Johannes's victory is partially credited to the anti-corruption component that he campaigned on. Since the Romanian Revolution in 1989 began the country's break away from communist rule to a turbulent transition which resulted in many abuses of power throughout the Romanian government. 25 years later, anti-corruption efforts have already been underway, but Romania continued to struggle with purging the corruption and holding offenders accountable. By this point, though progress had been made, those efforts would come under threat at various points due to some factions within the political structure attempting to amend laws that granted immunity to officials, making it more difficult to prosecute corruption. November 2nd, 2023. The Beatles song Now and Then was released. Originally written by John Lennon and recorded in the late 70s, the rough demo was recorded on a boombox with Lennon singing along while playing piano. The tape was given to Paul McCartney by Yoko Ono not long before the surviving members of the band very briefly worked on the song during a mid-90s reunion. The song was set aside due to challenges. Based on McCartney's account, one of the main reasons it was shelved quickly was due to George Harrison's objection. Harrison did not wish to pursue the song because of the technical challenges presented by the quality of the recording, as well as believing the song to be very rough. For McCartney's part, he had wished to revisit and finish it at some point. This would be made possible with the help of director Peter Jackson and Wingnut Films and the use of machine learning audio restoration that had been used to isolate audio from various recordings while putting together the Get Back documentary. McCartney and Ringo Starr continued to work on and complete the song. The final version includes George Harrison on guitar using tracks recorded before his death in 2001. That's all for this video. If you enjoyed this content and haven't already subscribed, please consider doing so. And I also really appreciate if you could leave a like. Thanks for watching.